What's going on, family? Welcome back. And today we're going to be diving into Ultimate X-Men #1 by Peach Momoko. If anyone that doesn't know this author and artist, she's an incredible asset to Marvel, because if you're a fan of anime like I am, you're going to absolutely fall in love with her style. But guys, before we start, if you're not subscribed to the channel, I just don't know what you're doing. So please, for your boy, hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell up top so you can get notified of the latest and greatest videos. But let's get into it. So this issue pretty much starts off at Asako Ichiki's middle school graduation, and she's feeling a little bit awkward and out of place because in the 3 years that she's been here, she's barely been at school. And we're going to find out the reason behind that a little bit later. But she thought at the very least she would at least show up to her own graduation. But as everything wraps up and the ceremony concludes, she notices out of the corner of her eye this girl rushing over to her, which she may be thinking is a little strange because she doesn't really have any friends. So the girl comes over and says that she has a second button from a boy to give to her. And for those that may not be familiar, in Japanese tradition, this is the equivalent of passing a love note to somebody. Because in Japan, on the male uniforms, the second button is closest to their heart. So when a guy gives this to a girl, this pretty much means he's trying to rizz her up. But by the time Asako asks the girl to point out the guy that gave her the button, by the time they both turn around, he's already gone. But after that, the girl runs away immaturely, laughing like it was some kind of joke, which really doesn't bother Asako because she's used to being bullied. But as she's looking at the button, she notices that there's a note attached to it. But as she goes to look at this note, she feels a presence looking over her shoulder. But before she can turn to see who it is, it's gone. But when she reads the note, it says, "Meet me at the temple in the mountain behind the school. Our time has come, my friend." And I don't know about anybody else, but I feel kind of sketched out reading that. Because I'm gonna keep it a bean, this doesn't sound like a note you would give a girl. And to be honest, it really doesn't sound like a note that you would give a friend. It sounds like you're trying to invite somebody to join the Legion of Doom. But she does decide to go because the thought of someone liking her is just too good of a thought to pass up, because she really just wants to make a friend. Once she's done with the note, her mom calls and asks if she's gonna be home for dinner, and she says, "No, I'm gonna be home late, so just go ahead and eat without me." So at the temple where she's waiting on her secret admirer, she notices a boy standing in the distance, but she recognizes who he is and begins to freak out and thinks that it's just a part of her imagination. Because later on in this story, we're gonna realize why it's impossible for him to actually be there. But in that moment, she notices a shadowy figure standing there talking to her. The shadow seems happy that she's here, and it says it knew that she would come because she was hoping to make a new friend. And I'm not gonna lie, this panel right here gives me Full Metal Alchemist vibes. And the thing that she's talking to looks like a mix between the test tube version of Father and the Truth. But anyway, she asks who the shadow is and what it wants, which she's handling this situation a lot better than I would, because if a living shadow starts talking to me in the middle of the forest, I'm running. And she asked the shadow did it give her the button, and its response was, "I did. I need a way to meet you because you haven't been going to school." She asked what does it want, and it said to give her this and hands her a charm. And this charm looks like a representation of her. But I'll explain that a little bit later. But she's immediately horrified because she recognizes this charm very well, and she asks, "Where did you get this?" Because this was given to her by her friend Tsubasa, which was the boy that she thought she saw when she was sitting in the forest. Tsubasa was her close and only friend. It was maybe a guy that had a crush on her. But the reason why it was impossible for her to have seen him in the forest was because he died. Because just like Asaka, Tsubasa was ridiculed and bullied, but it got to the point where he couldn't cope and he decided to take his own life. And just like many people who this tragedy affects, she kind of blames herself. Because yes, she did offer words of encouragement and advice, but it seemed like she was just listening to him and not really hearing him. She just wanted her friend to pick himself up and keep moving, but he couldn't. And the shadow keeps reminding her of this. He says that it's her fault and that he would still be alive if she just bothered to listen to him. He says you blame yourself and you need to take responsibility. That's why you stopped coming to school, which explains her absence at the beginning of this story. He ends their conversation by saying the time for sorrow is over. Now it's the time for vengeance. And the moment he says that, a straw doll appears in his place. When she bends down to check it out, she notices that something hits the top of her head. As she turns to look, she sees a vision of Tsubasa hanging from a tree. This, of course, freaks her out and she begins to cry, frantically riding her bike, saying that she's sorry, just trying to escape the horrible vision she just witnessed. But as she's riding her bike to try to get away, she hears the voice of Tsubasa saying, "Why are you running?" He then asks her, isn't she the one that told him not to run, referring to the advice that she gave him when he was being bullied. And just then, a car is heading straight forward, looking like it's about to hit her. But right before the moment of impact, her powers activate, causing this phantom armor to appear around her. And this takes her and the driver by surprise, and they both kind of freak out. And once again, the artist's anime skills in this book are really showing, because this definitely reminds me of Itachi Susanoo. And on the next page, it appears that the armor seems to wave back at her, trying to make sure that she's actually safe. Now, right here is where I kind of want to put a pause to this story a little bit and tell you why this is unique to this comic book. Because in the traditional telling of the X-Men, Asako Ichiki's armor isn't sentient, and it doesn't activate automatically automatically when she's in danger. It's more so just a weapon that she can use that gives her super durability and strength. So to see the writers give her that ability in this comic is pretty freaking cool. I really hope in future issues that it gets its own personality and quirks. I think when characters in the anime have this type of power, it really makes it unique and fun. So to see this fresh new take on this character is really pretty cool to me. But once the threat has been neutralized, the armor disappears and the car is pretty much wrecked. It then panels over to the next day where the accident is being reported on TV and Asako is in her room pretty much still shaken up by the whole event. She's trying to convince herself that Tsubasa taking his own life wasn't her fault, but almost in an instant, she looks at the charm that the shadow gave her and suddenly gets a burst of courage. And she decides right then and there that she's going to go and confront her fear instead of hiding from it. She goes back to the temple where she met the shadow, and on her way there, she overhears some bystanders talking about the accident that happened last night. And the whole town is pretty much chalked this up to the driver just being drunk. I mean, let's be honest here. If you're a cop and someone tells you that, hey, look, a giant suit of armor wrecked my car, what are you really going to believe? But at the temple, she sees flowers left behind, and I'm assuming this is the tree that she saw Tsubasa hanging from. And out of nowhere, the shadow appears asking her, does she have a guilty conscience? While also trying to give her back her graduation diploma because apparently in their last encounter, she freaked out and dropped it. But in this exchange, he's telling her that you're making this more hard than it has to be, and it would all just be easier if you join me. And this is where Hisako's courage starts to show because she's asking the shadow what does it really want, saying that this isn't about Tsubasu's death, that you're just using this as an excuse to torment me. And the shadow tells her that he's only trying to help her work through her trauma and that she's playing the victim, and that his main goal is to help her by tearing her from her shell. And as he goes to attack her, her armor appears in front of her to protect her. And during this time, the shadow was reaching out, attacking her, saying that it's all her fault and she's the reason that Tsubasa is gone. And right here, this has got me thinking that this is the Shadow King. And just a quick little backstory on who the Shadow King is. He's the manifestation of all the darkness in human consciousness. And he spawned into the world along with the first Nightmare. And sometime before World War II, he bonded to a young mutant named Ahmad Farouk. And he's appeared in a lot of X-Men storylines and animated TV series, mainly being the antagonist of Storm. Personally, the first time I ever seen him on screen was in Wolverine and the X-Men. And that's a really cool episode if you guys want to go check that out. But as her armor lashes out to protect her, she begins to panic because she believes this is all just a dream. And she's trying to get herself to wake up. But this only gives the Shadow more ammunition to begin attacking her with his words. Because he says to her, you believe that Tsubasu's death is just a bad dream? And what looks like his final words before her armor squeezes the rest of the life out of him, he says that his curse is already in motion and he's going to start with somebody that she knows. And as she panics, telling him to shut up, she throws the charm that he gave her right back at him. And when she looks up, she's surprised to see the person that picks it up is Tsubasa. And he begins to tell her that it's too late. And at that moment, her phone starts to ring and he says you should answer that. And as she picks it up, an unknown voice asks her was she friends with Tsubasa. It then informs her that his coach took his own life. And with his coach doing this, it's now rumored that his coach was one of the ones that used to bully him. And before she looks up, Tsubasa's gone. And at this point, like anyone's mind would be, hers is now racing with questions. She said it seems like all the dark secrets that were once hid away is now being unraveled by some unknown force. That some cruel and unknown power has now torn the lid off of all their secrets, leaving them exposed to the world. And she's also pondering why this unknown force keeps appearing around her, protecting her. But guys, this wraps up this issue. If you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, guys, please like, comment, and subscribe so you can get connected with the latest and greatest comic book content. To all my anime family and my comic book consultants, until next time, y'all, peace.